Hi, I'm Kelly, and this is the owner's class for the Singer Start 1304 sewing machine. We're going to go through a couple of the basic things about your machine, like how to get it threaded, how to select a stitch, how to wind your bobbin, and also how to make a buttonhole, plus much more. In the box are two great resources for you. You have your instruction manual with all kinds of information about your machine, and then you also have your quick start guide, which will help you get your machine threaded quickly. Now let's take a quick tour of your machine. Let's take a closer look at your machine. To the right of your machine is the port for your foot control and your power cord. So we can plug that in and press our power switch. Above your power switch is your hand wheel. You always want to turn the hand wheel towards you or counterclockwise. This is used to manually raise and lower your take-up lever and your needle. On top of your machine is your bobbin winding spindle, which we'll talk about a little bit later. There's a thread guide, two spool pins. This is your carrying handle. This is your bobbin winding tension disc and a thread guide. In the front of your machine is your reverse lever. This is your stitch selector dial. Let's look at the stitches that come on your machine. You have three different straight stitches, short, medium, and long. You also have three different zigzag stitches, narrow, medium, and wide. This is your multi-stitch zigzag, and this is our blind hem stitch. This is a really nice decorative scallop stitch. And finally, you have a 4-step buttonhole, which we'll do a little bit later. This is your presser foot, and to the back of your machine is your presser foot lifter. So we can raise and lower our presser foot. Think of it this way, whenever you're not sewing or whenever you're threading your machine, you always want to keep your presser foot up or in park. Whenever we go to sew, we want to lower our presser foot and then we can drive or we can start sewing. In the front of your machine is your removable storage compartment. This is a hinged door that reveals your bobbin holder. It also shows you your bobbin case. We'll wind a bobbin in a moment. When you open your removable storage compartment, you'll see all the different accessories that come with your machine, like some extra needles, some extra bobbins, and some feet. So let's look at the feet that come with your machine. The zipper foot is used for sewing zippers into your projects. This is the buttonhole foot. Use this foot along with the stitch selector dial to sew a buttonhole in just 4 easy steps. To wind a bobbin, we first need to take off our removable storage compartment. Now we can lower the hinge door to reveal our bobbin holder. To remove the bobbin case, simply lift out and pull out the bobbin case. Your machine is designed to use a class 15 transparent bobbin. So when you go to the store to buy more bobbins, make sure that you get a class 15 transparent bobbin because it's going to work the best in your machine. Now we'll take the spool pin felt, which is included with your accessories, and we'll place that on the spool pin. Now we'll take our spool of thread and sit that on our spool pin. We're going to follow the diagram to the left of your machine, and it shows winding the thread around our bobbin winding tension disc. So taking your thread and going from the front of the disc and around to the back, you can see that the thread goes in between the disc. And there should be a slight tension. With your thread in one hand, we'll take our class 15 transparent bobbin in the other, and you'll notice on your bobbin there are 2 holes, one on each side. You'll take your thread through the center of your bobbin and up through one of those holes. It doesn't matter which one. And then we'll hold the end of our thread with one hand, and then we'll place our bobbin on our bobbin winding spindle. And you want to make sure that you snap it all the way down in place. Now we'll slide the bobbin to the right while still holding our thread tail. Now we're going to press that on our foot control, and we're going to let our thread go around our bobbin a few times while still holding our thread tail. We're going to pause for a moment and take some scissors and cut our thread tail as close down to our bobbin as we can. And now we can push down on our foot pedal again and wind the rest of our bobbin. You can stop the bobbin winding whenever you think you have enough thread for your project, or you can let it go until it completely fills up. I'm going to go ahead and stop it now. And to remove our bobbin, we need to undo what we've already done. So we're just going to slide our spindle to the left. Now we can remove our bobbin and take our scissors and cut our thread. Now that our bobbin is wound, we want to place our bobbin into our bobbin case. Before we do that, let's make sure our thread is going in the right direction. When we look at our bobbin, our thread should be coming from the top of your bobbin and to the right, or clockwise. Now we can drop our bobbin into our bobbin case. If we hold our thread and pull, you can see your bobbin moving clockwise. If it isn't turning clockwise, your bobbin isn't threaded right, and your machine won't sew properly. So we really need to make sure that our bobbin is always going clockwise. To thread our bobbin case, I'm going to take my thread over to the metal slot right on the side of our case. Now, I'm going to take it down and behind the metal tab until it snaps into place in the large opening on the side of your bobbin case. Now we're going to lift our latch on the back of our bobbin case, and we want to have our prong or our finger, our metal finger here, pointed north or toward 12 o'clock. Then we can take and seat our bobbin case into our bobbin holder with our finger again going north. And you'll see that it's in there securely. It's not falling out or going to the right or the left. Now we can close our hinge door, making sure that our thread doesn't get caught in the sides. Before we thread our upper thread, there are two things that we need to remember. The first is that we need to have our take-up lever in its highest position. And to do that, we turn our hand wheel toward ourselves. The second thing we need to remember is to make sure our presser foot is lifted. Now we can take our spool pin felt and place it on our spool pin. Then we'll take our sewing thread and place it on the spool pin. We'll use this thread guide, and you can see the arrow here that lets us know to take our thread from the right side of our machine toward the left and across. There's another diagram at the top of your machine that shows where our thread needs to go. It tells us to take it to the back side of the machine and then through this hook toward the front. We're going to take our thread down through this groove, and you'll follow your arrows. So we'll go down and then make a U-turn and back up. And then you want to go to the right of your take-up lever. So to the right of our take-up lever, all the way to the back, and then we'll go to the left side. You can see the arrow here tells us to do that. And then we'll pull the thread forward. And as we do that, the thread will drop into the eye of our take-up lever. Coming down from our take-up lever, there's a small hook right above our needle. We'll take our thread and go behind the hook. Taking your thread, you want to thread it through the eye of your needle. We've threaded the eye of our needle, and we want to make sure that our thread is to the back of our needle and on top of our presser foot. Our presser foot is lifted high, And now we need to bring our bobbin thread up. To do that, you want to gently hold the thread in your left hand, and then using your right hand, turn the wheel towards you. The needle will go down and then all the way back up, and now we can gently pull on the thread with our left hand, and you can see the loop here, which is our bobbin thread. So now we can pull the bobbin thread through, and we'll take both threads underneath our presser foot and to the back of our machine. Before we get started, let's test to make sure that we've threaded our machine properly. I've got a little bit of scrap fabric here, and I'm going to turn to the medium straight stitch on my stitch selector dial. Now we can take our fabric and go underneath our presser foot, and then using our presser foot lifter in the back, we'll lower it down. Now we can press down on our foot control and sew. Once you're done, we can lift our presser foot, and notice that my needle is still kind of down in my fabric. We always want to make sure that we raise the needle to its highest position before our next stitch. To do that, we always have to turn our hand wheel toward ourselves, so always counterclockwise. And this is a really important step. Be sure to never turn the hand wheel backwards. If you do, your machine will jam the next time you start to sew. So remember, always turn it towards you. Now that our needle is raised to the highest position using our hand wheel, we can take our fabric, and there is a small cutter on the side of your machine, so we can just take our thread over to our cutter and cut our thread. Now let's look at our stitch to see if we've threaded our machine properly. The top looks good, our bottom looks good. I have a sample here of what could happen. The top looks good, but when we flip it over, the back looks a little messy. There's some loops here and everything that just doesn't look right. You may think this is your bobbin thread, but most likely it means that our upper thread isn't threaded properly. So at this point, it would be a good idea to grab your cheat sheet or your quick start guide and rethread your upper thread. Now let's make a seam. Before we sew our seam, let's look at our stitch plate. There are multiple markings on our stitch plate that show us different seam allowances. So now we can choose a seam allowance and place our fabric underneath our presser foot. Let's lower our presser foot onto our fabric, and we're going to go a few stitches. We're going to press down on our reverse lever, go back over those stitches, and then continue sewing. So let's try it. We'll push down on our foot control, go a few stitches, press down on your reverse lever, go back over those stitches, and then we'll continue sewing forward. Reminder, you're just guiding the fabric. You don't need to push the fabric, and you don't need to pull it from behind. Let the sewing machine do the work. When you get toward the end, we're going to stop, press down our reverse lever again, and go back over the past few stitches. And then we'll release, and we'll continue sewing to the end of our fabric. Using our hand wheel, we're going to raise our needle to the highest position, always turning the hand wheel toward us. Now we can lift our presser foot and take our fabric out and then cut our thread. So this is our seam. We like to do the reverse at the beginning and at the end to ensure that our project doesn't unravel. Let's try a few of the other stitches on your machine. It's really easy to select another stitch. We just turn the dial. I think I'm going to try a zigzag stitch. The zigzag stitches are great for finishing a seam or for decorative purposes. So I've got my fabric underneath my presser foot. I'm going to lower my presser foot And now we'll just press on our foot control. We'll use the hand wheel to raise our needle to the top position, and then we'll raise our presser foot and cut our thread. Now let's try our multi-zigzag stitch. This is a great stitch for decorative stitches, also to do repairs, to insert elastic, or to attach trims like ribbons. Placing our fabric underneath our presser foot, we'll lower our presser foot, and then we'll press our foot control. At the end, we're going to raise our needle by turning our hand wheel toward ourselves to its highest position, and now we can raise our presser foot and cut our thread. Let's try the decorative scallop stitch. I like this for children's clothes or home decor. I use it with some of my craft projects and pretty much anything else you can think of. Placing our fabric underneath our presser foot, we'll lower our presser foot, press down on our foot control, and sew. When I'm finished, we'll raise our needle using our hand wheel, raise our presser foot, and cut our thread. So these are just a few of the stitches you can do on your machine. Now let's make a buttonhole. Before we sew our buttonhole, we need to remove our current presser foot. All we need to do is press from the back and push towards yourself, and the foot will snap off. This is your buttonhole foot that's included with your accessories. You want to have the B facing you, and then all we have to do is put this metal bar into the groove and it will snap on. So just push back and that will snap on. It is really, really easy. And you want to make sure that these red markings on the buttonhole foot are in front of your needle and to the left. We place our button on the fabric where we want to make our buttonhole, and then using a fabric marker, I'm just going to mark where the top of my buttonhole needs to be and where the bottom needs to be. And now I can take a ruler and lay that between my two lines and make a straight line connecting. It looks like the capital letter I. Now we can stitch out our buttonhole. We want to make sure that the front of our foot is pushed all the way to the back. And next we can take our fabric and place it under our foot. We want to line up the cross or the bottom center of our capital I underneath our needle. And now on your stitch selector dial, we're going to turn to the buttonhole step 1. This is going to sew the left side of your buttonhole. So now we can press on our foot control and sew the left side of our buttonhole up into the top line of our I. We want to raise our needle using our hand wheel to the top position. And now on your stitch selector dial, turn to step 2. This will sew the top of your buttonhole, the bar tack. We're going to sew this about 6 to 8 stitches. Now we need to raise our needle using our hand wheel. And then on your stitch selector dial, we'll turn to step 3 of our buttonhole. And now we can continue sewing, and this will sew the right side of our buttonhole. And we're going to go back down to the bottom of our eye. Let's raise our needle. And then on our dial, turn to step 4 for our last step of our buttonhole. And again, about 6 to 8 stitches. Let's raise our needle, and this time we'll raise our presser foot, and I'm going to pull this over to the side and use our cutter to cut our thread. And now we can see our finished product. The last thing we need to do is, taking a pair of scissors, you want to find your starting thread. And then I'm just going to trim that thread down at the bottom. And then for our finishing thread, we want to take a hand needle and thread our finishing thread through our hand needle, and then you will sew down through the top and through to your back. Then we can knot or tie off our stitch and our buttonhole to make sure that our buttonhole doesn't unravel. A quick tip for opening your buttonhole is to place a straight pin underneath your top bar tack. Next, using the seam ripper included with your accessories, we can place that into the bottom of our buttonhole and simply go to the top. The pin prevents us from cutting through that top of our bar tack. Now we can take out our pin and we can see our buttonhole. To change our needle, we're going to use the L screwdriver that's included with your accessories. Above your needle is your needle clamp screw. Using our screwdriver, we'll turn our screw to the left. And all we need to do is just loosen the screw and our needle will come down. Your new needle, you'll notice, has a flat side on one edge. We want to make sure that flat side is facing the back of our machine. And now we can slide up, and then using your screwdriver again, we're going to turn our needle clamp screw and tighten. And now our needle is changed. Depending on the type of fabric or the type of sewing you're doing, you'll need to change your needle. There are 2 basic types of needles: regular point needles and ballpoint needles. Our regular point needles are for our non-stretchy fabrics like cotton or wool or silk. They come in an assortment of sizes depending upon the weight of your fabric: lightweight fabric, medium fabric, or heavyweight fabric. Our ballpoint needles are for our stretchy fabrics like t-shirts or sweatshirts or swimsuit fabric. These also come in an assortment of sizes for lightweight to heavyweight fabric. We hope you've enjoyed this owner's class. Be sure to check out the Singer website for more information. Happy sewing!